me his notes and stuff. I just started? Oh, okay. Hi. Hi, everybody. I guess we're going live.
Sorry, except for 5.
Thanks, Seth. Appreciate that. Good morning. So as I was saying, all right, so we're live on the YouTubes and on the Facebooks. Hi, everybody. My name is Gary Hughes, if you didn't know that from all of the advertising we've been doing with my big face on it. I'm from Orlando. I'm the tourist trap in the South. Yes, it's a beautiful place to live. And one thing that's unique about where I live that New York also has in common is we're sort of a magnet for a lot of entertainment and a lot of business. Orlando is one of the biggest convention cities in the world, up there with like just second only to Las Vegas, I think. And so our business sort of grew up around photographing the people who are working in my town in entertainment and the people who come into town to do business. And so one of the reasons, and Eric and I, from Canon, Eric and I talked a lot about what we wanted to talk about in this program, what I had to say that could be unique. And so I think in the photography world, a lot of people teach sort of, what are the big things everybody teaches? It's weddings and portraits, right? I mean, that's like what everybody does. Most photographers aren't shooting magazine covers and advertising. We're not really doing that stuff. That is, to be fair, some people do get to do that. Most of us do not. Would that be accurate to say that? Most of us are not David LaChapelle or Annie Leibovitz, right? But you can make a living working in commercial photography, not doing that type of stuff. There's tons and tons of it. And so we talk about commercial portraits. What it basically means is it's everything from a headshot to personal branding images to custom stock photos for businesses. I do that stuff all the time. In one day, I photographed a lawyer, a realtor, a model portfolio, and the world beard champion. Yes, that's a thing, a beard, champion beard. Like that's pretty cool. So and those are all the things I do. Every picture I take is for someone for their job. So I'm not really creating what you would call the end user product, which would be if you're photographing a pregnant woman or you're photographing a wedding or you're photographing a family portrait. I'm not supplying that. I don't do that. I don't work in that world anymore. I did for years. But what happened is I realized that I hated my job. I really did. And so everybody, I mean, I love portraits, I love weddings, and we have lots of pictures of our family. I have a lot of it. My parents are, come on down here, man, you're good. A lot of people work in the portrait and wedding world, and I do not knock it at all because it's a great way to make a living. My parents are photographers. That's how they fed our family. That's how they put food on the table and paid the bills. Weddings and portraits. I was the kid who was riding to soccer practice with another family on Saturday because my parents were always shooting a wedding. So I knew that. And when my wife got pregnant with our first daughter, you ever have those moments in your life when something happens and you can feel neurons burning across your brain like something's coming alive? I'm realizing something that I didn't know was there the whole time. What I realized was how much that affected me growing up. And so when I knew I was going to be a dad, I wanted to make a different decision. I didn't want to quit photography, but I didn't want to work nights and weekends anymore. And so it took about 2 years of a transition when my wife and I had one of these sort of butt-puckering moments where you're sitting there looking at each other going like, we're going to drop weddings, but that was 60 grand a year of our business. So where do you get that money from? And so how do you replace that? What are we going to do instead? And so we always had a sideline photographing actors and models for their portfolio. Like that's the dream, right? Like good-looking people who like being on camera, totally. But I got a call one day, another one of these moments with neurons burning across your brain. I remember the moment, a guy called me up. I answered the phone and he said, do you take headshots of anybody who's not young and good-looking? Because I need a headshot, I'm a lawyer. I'm like, at that moment, the neurons started firing and burned a scar on my brain that has been there ever since. Because do you know what? I thought, holy crap, I'm trying to make a living taking pictures of actors and models when literally everyone else in the world also needs a headshot. Why am I not doing that? Do you know how many weddings there are a year in the United States? Anybody got a guess? Throw it out. How many weddings? Go. At least 40, yeah. At least 40. There are 40. That's how many you photograph, probably. No, there are 2.5 million weddings every year in the US. That sounds like a lot, right? When there are 5 million wedding photographers, it sounds like a lot, right? But yeah, you got it. I appreciate that. There are 23 million small businesses. 23 million small businesses, and most people don't work for a small business. When you think about the market, go outside into this city and look at any building. Everybody in that building needs a headshot. And everybody needs professional branding images and stuff. And that company needs stock photos for their website. The market is massive for commercial portraiture, and when I see all of my colleagues focus their business on photographing portraits and weddings, and I'm thinking that the market is so much smaller there. And so all of these things kind of came together in our head when we decided that we were going to get out of the portrait and wedding business. Because not only did I want to get my nights and weekends back, I also wasn't happy. Like, why do you work for yourself if you're going to be unhappy? Who said if you do what you love for a living, you'll never work a day in your life? Does anybody know who said that? I don't. It was the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because when you love something, you work 10 times harder at it than you would if you didn't care. And so you work much, much harder because you're invested in it. So I know photographers that are up until 2, 3 in the morning editing images. You guys there doing that? Every Saturday and Sunday, out slogging their gear around, dragging couches into fields and stuff like that. And like, I didn't want that. And so what we do now is I photograph executives, professionals, actors, models, and company branding images. And that's the large majority of what I do. Every once in a while I get thrown for a loop to do something weird. I don't really do product photography, not a whole lot of architecture. When people say commercial photography, that's sort of where your brain goes a little bit. I photograph people for their jobs. And so what I want to do is tell you a little bit about that business, about how we got into that and where we get those clients from. And for those of you that are in the photography business, I'll keep that the shortest part, because most everybody just wants to see me take pictures, right? Isn't that what we're here for? And so, and then I'm going to show you some really like solid techniques that I use and the equipment that I use to do it. And I picked everything very specifically for a reason, is because what I don't like is when I go to a program and the message, the undercurrent is, if you buy this stuff, you will be able to do what I do. And did anybody find that frustrating? And now you're going to go see somebody else speak. You're like, now I got to buy that, and now I got to buy that. I use speedlights probably 90% of the time when I'm shooting on location. They're light and easy to transport, and I teach them because almost everybody's got a couple of these things lying around, and they're sort of underutilized. And so this is what I use. I did 500 headshots at a convention in Vegas last year, all with speedlights. I just did a convention in Miami last week, shot headshots for 2 straight days, all speedlights and umbrellas. And that's it, man. And so the gear is going to be what I actually use and stuff that you probably already have or something near enough. And rather than go, well, now you're going to go buy a $500 Octobox or something like that, which is a real pain in the butt considering photographers don't make that much money. You know? But we spend so much on gear. Why do we do this to ourselves? Anyway, so I'm really glad you guys are here. And if you have any questions, feel free. I work better when it's more interactive. So don't just sit there and let me talk at your face. If you want to know something or see something or have a question, what I will ask is that if you really have something burning inside that you need everybody to know, I want you to talk to Seth, and he'll hook you up with your own live Adorama TV thing that you can teach a class. So, and what I mean to say is don't interrupt on anybody else's learning. It's very possible, in fact, 100%, that I'm going to teach something that you may already know, but the person next to you may not. And so try not to infringe on somebody else's learning. I'm sure that there are way varying levels of skill in here. Some of you would probably, make me look like a rookie. And that's cool, man, that we're all here to learn. And so I'll give you whatever I got. I'll be completely honest about anything. And I don't hold anything back. But I do want to make sure that everybody gets something out of it. Is that cool? Okay, I see some nodding heads. Yes, Gary. All right, awesome. Okay, we had a question before we went live talking about a little about marketing this business. So I'll give you kind of like an overall strategy to this. The difference between running a portrait and wedding-based business, and whether that be high school seniors or maternity or newborns or family portraits or whatever you do, and running a commercial studio, is that you are changing the vision of your marketing from marketing to individuals and families. Now you're a B2B, which means you're a business-to-business business, right? So your marketing has to change. What is the difference between communicating with a client about their upcoming wedding and communicating with a client about images that they need of their keyboards that they manufacture for their website? Well, how would you approach that differently? Let me give you an example. Let's say that you get an inquiry, you get an email, and somebody says, hey, I'm such and such, and I'm getting married on April 14th, and blah, 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 at this beautiful venue. There's a vineyard and a couch in a field, and it's a really nice place. When you respond to that as a portrait and wedding photographer, you go, Oh, thank you for contacting Precious Magical Moments Photography. We strive to do blah, blah. And then you just go, your relationship marketing, your love marketing. You're building a personal relationship with that client because you're selling yourself as much as you're selling your work. Now, when you shoot commercially, a lot of times, they don't care about you at all. And it's not an emotional purchasing decision. It comes down to pretty much two things. One, anybody guess? How much does it cost? And are you available? That's the two questions I get all the time. So I would say this. Don't try to pull people into a larger conversation about your brand when they contact you for commercial work. Answer their questions and then follow through. And that's the biggest marketing thing I can tell you is I know so many portrait and wedding photographers that are incredible artists that they get these jobs that are life-changing amounts of money could come into their studio if they would just shut up and answer the question. In relationship marketing, in-person sales, you're always trying to pull the person into a larger conversation. You're trying to get them on the phone. You're right? These are all true things. And you don't necessarily go, well, that's going to cost $6,000. You make them fall in love with you, and then you sell them $6,000 worth of stuff. Like, that's how it works. And that is tried and true. There's nothing, I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying that if you try to pull that with clients, corporate clients, by and large, they don't go for it. At least not the work that I do. So here's an inquiry. We're coming to Orlando for a conference on May 25th at the Gaylord Palms Resort. And we need headshots for 500 people. Are you available and how much would that cost? I answer, yes, I'm available. Yes, always say yes. If you're not available, hire someone else to shoot it and still keep the money. That's what's great about my job. It's true. He's laughing. The great part about my business is that it's scalable. So I respond, yes, I'm available. This ballpark figure based on what you said is how much I cost. Here's my entire price list so that you can build your own estimate. And then I always end the email with one question, like something that not only shows that I know what I'm doing, that I can anticipate their problems, and that will give them a reason to contact me back. Well, a good example of that would be, will you need a group photo? Will you also need event coverage? I pick one question to end the email with, because then they'll get back to you. So now they've got my price list, they know that I'm available, and in many cases, I will also respond by attaching my tax information and my insurance certificate. So I've already solved a problem for them, because they're going to have to get that from me anyway at some point. Does that make sense? Is everybody cool with that? So marketing these things is a lot easier because it's business to business and it's not an emotional decision. Here's how it works. Boss comes to middle management and says, Christine, I want you to find a photographer to take pictures of all of our printers or something. I don't know, whatever they make. Whatever you're going to get hired to do. And then what does Christine do? She's probably 28, postgraduate. She gets on the Google machine and she goes, photographers, Orlando. And then she emails the first 5 people that pop up. And the first person that gets back to them that is available, that can do it for the amount of money they want to spend, gets the job. You are on a list of things to do of someone who does not care about you personally. And there's nothing wrong with that. Get paper towels for the break room. The copier needs toner. Find a photographer for our convention. Like boom, boom, boom. You're on that list. And so what do people do with lists of things? They procrastinate like crazy. So if you don't follow up, you're not going to get hired either because somebody is going to follow up. So it's pretty simple. I recommend highly that you be involved in business groups like BNI, your Chamber of Commerce, stuff like that. Create those relationships with other businesses and get your referral network going. I get so much more traction from working in my community than just about anything else. And by the way, find a good Chamber of Commerce that doesn't have a lot of photographers in it. That's my best advice. The one I joined recently, they have 2,000 members, 80 law firms, that's my bread and butter, law firms, and 2 photographers. I'm like, zing, and they're both portrait and wedding photographers. I'm in there like swimwear, baby. That's my new place. I go to every single meeting I can get to, and they love me because I did headshots for all the staff of the Chamber of Commerce. I donated that to the Chamber of Commerce. I said that it is my pleasure to do that for you because the $2 or so grand I would have made off of doing their headshots doesn't matter to me as much as the fact that those people are going to refer me to everyone. Does that make sense? You with me? And I also, by the way, provide an invoice that's zeroed out with the amount that it would have been, just so they know that I have a value and they know what I'm giving them. You good with that? Whenever you give smart, and always send an invoice that's zeroed out. That really helps out a lot, okay? So that's my best marketing advice. That and hire somebody who can get you placed on Google searches. Because those jobs very often come from that search, and if you're not appearing in a Google search, you're just not going to book as much. You could double your take very easily by spending a couple of $1,000s to pay somebody reputable. If they call you, anybody get those calls? Your local Google representative? It just makes me mad on principle because they pretend that they work for Google. Like they're trying to fool my grandmother into buying a car or something. I don't know what these people are thinking. I just got a call like that today. So search engine optimization, and I find that networking, local business stuff. The reason search engine optimization works best in business-to-business stuff, and I'll tell you this, is because if you're a boutique business, if you're a wedding photographer and you're in the $6,000 to $10,000 range, if you place very highly in search engines, you're going to get a lot of inquiries, but most of those inquiries will not be your client. Because people search on Google for stuff like that, they're often price shopping. If you are a business-to-business, like a headshot photographer, a commercial photographer, that's how they find people. And since they're already price shopping anyway, you're in the price shopping business if you're in commercial photography because they're always have a price. So it's going to be everyone who contacts you will more likely be your client than if you're a boutique portrait and wedding studio. So consider that. If you're not getting great results in your boutique end of your business from search engines, that's probably, if you're a wedding photographer, your best jobs come from what? Venues and planners, right? They always do. Always have, always will, right? Your best inquiries do not come from Google most of the time. There are exceptions. I don't speak in absolutes. Only a Sith speaks in absolutes. And I'm one of the good guys. All right. So you guys ready to shoot a little bit? And if you have any more questions, we can follow up with some more marketing Q&A at the end. We'll leave some time. So write your marketing and business questions down, and we'll cover that at the end. All right. OK. So Juju, are you ready? I am. Come on down, love. Here we are. This is our wonderful model today. Juju is here. Yeah, it's just waist ups. Okay, you could. Okay, let me make sure that's low for you. Hang on a sec. I'll get that down. I also recommend if you're going to shoot seated, make sure you got a posing stool that doesn't have wheels. Every once in a while, somebody takes a dive because they sit down too hard. Something I noticed about people who aren't in great shape is that last 2 seconds of sitting down is a trust fall for some reason. People who are in better shape, New Yorkers are by and large, I think, pretty in good shape because you guys seem to walk a lot. I'm from Florida. We take the car to get the mail. Like, we don't walk a lot. In the South, where we got a lot of big folks in the South. All right, we got a lot more land. All right, so have a stool with no wheels on it if you're going to shoot seated, especially in a volume situation. Every once in a while, somebody does a little trust fall and falls on their butt, and that's no good for anybody. Make sure your insurance is paid up. All right, so we'll do gear real quick, get it out of the way. There's a couple of you, I'm looking at you, and I'm thinking you have burning gear questions inside you right now. So do a brief overview of what I'm using. Pardon me. Shooting with Canon 5D Mark IV, and I'm using the Canon 600 speedlights because they have the built-in wireless, which I love. I used to struggle with wireless receivers, and it was the bane of my existence getting the consistency between firing and distance and accuracy using off-camera lighting. And when these came out, I bought them like the next day. I was the most excited I could ever be. So that built-in wireless is a huge, huge help. That's one less thing that you have to charge is batteries for your wireless. I've got the wireless transmitter. As far as modifiers go, I've got this beautiful umbrella, right? So this is what I use 90% of the time when I'm shooting. I use a reflective umbrella with a diffuser cover. Now, what's really cool about these, there are several advantages. One being that an umbrella is a whole lot cheaper than a softbox this size. You get a softbox this size, it's going to cost you a couple $100 at least. These things are typically, anywhere, depending on the size, anywhere from $50 to about $125. And you could get, I have an 8-foot one in my studio that I use every day. And with shipping and the diffuser cover, I think it was like $130. So I've got a 7-foot softbox for like $130. The difference is it's a parabola. Parabola. Anybody familiar with a parabola? Like a band shell. So instead of shooting the light through the back like a softbox does, and then it has to go through a baffle, and then another baffle to diffuse the light, those two diffusion screens. This only needs the one diffusion screen because it's already not pointed directly at the center of the inside of the baffle. It hits the parabola and spreads out and goes wide. So you're going to get a very, very similar light using something like this than you would with a gigantic, very expensive softbox. So what's also cool is that with an umbrella, you don't have to change what lights you have. You can use speed lights, which I do most of the time. If you have Canon speed lights, Broncolors, Pro Photos, photogenic, it doesn't matter. Umbrellas work with all of those. You don't have to change the lights you have to use the modifier. Does that make sense? All right, so yeah, go ahead.
Do you have one speed light there?
Just one speed light, yeah. It does the trick, and I will show you. It's all you need. All right, so basically what I want to do is I want to emulate and give you some pointers on a typical business portrait, something that I would do all day long, because I like money. You guys like money? I like lots of it. Yeah, okay. So these aren't the most exciting things in the world for most of you. I really get geeked out by it because every time I click the shutter, it's like money, money, money. So it's very, very good for business. Anybody get inquiries like this in their business? You get a lot of inquiries for business portraits? Anybody? Headshots, stuff like that? No, just you. Okay. Eric, too. The problem is at some point I realized that we can make our whole business pretty much out of this. Just doing basic headshots is about 75% of the income in my studio. Isn't that crazy? It's insane to think about. But thanks to the interweb and Outlook email signature photos, everybody needs a headshot. So I'm going to give you the basics. Run it down. We're going to do 1 light, 2 light, 3 lights. And then Juju is going to transform magically from a CFO to a fashion model just like that, because we're going to do some more fashion-y, model-y type stuff. So I'm going to give you some basic business headshots, how to pose and light those, and then posing and lighting for what we call an agency comp and an actor's headshot. And so those and how those are going to differ, how you're going to move your lights around, how your settings are going to change, stuff like that. Everybody good on that? Okay. So you're going to have some really good, hard nuts and bolts take-homes, so stuff that I do. What I would like you to pay the most attention to, the lighting is great, but I'm sure that there are plenty of places on the interwebs where you guys can learn to light. Although my lighting's awesome, it's fine, you can admit it. What's the best thing about what I do is how I get what I get out of people, how I get them into position, and how I get them to interact. I don't shock them. I'm not mean to them. I do some very, very simple things to get control of every kind of person. And so I've cultivated it from shooting 3,000 to 5,000 heads a year. I've cultivated some very specific, very easy techniques to get people into the right positions. Do you ever struggle with that, directing your subject? That's like the hardest part about it, is to sort of get out of your head and into the camera, you know? All right. So here we go. We're going to start with 1 light. Now, I use large modifiers, and I typically use them very close. There's a good reason for that. Anybody know why? Take a guess. I know I have a small studio. My first studio was 120 square feet. Yeah. This is the Canon 70-200 2.8 IS2 L series lens. This is my go-to. I also use the 85 a lot for headshots. That'd be the 85-1.8. I like it because it's razor sharp, it's very light, and it's about 300 bucks. It's awesome. All right. So we should be having the ability to see what's coming out of the camera as it happens. This isn't really fair. What we should do is get like ugly models. So real talent is making normal people look great. And making Juju look great is like a cakewalk. That's super easy. All right. So what I've got here is the way I have the light set up. I call it the flying saucer. Now I get made fun of because of the size of my modifiers. You could light a group of 10 people with something this big, right? And so most of you are probably shooting individual pictures with something quite a bit smaller, yes? I love a massive light source. If you check out the monitor here, see how soft and beautiful that light is. And it's just because I use something very big, very close up. And you'll also notice that I don't point it directly at her. What's the conventional position for a portrait? Anybody know that? 45 and 45, right? That's what they tell us, 45 and 45. That should give you a headshot, get your Rembrandt light going. What happens is, when you use it that close as I like to shoot, it has a very harsh effect to be direct like that. So my typical position is going to be just about, not too far out of arm's length. Go like that for me. Yeah. Not too much farther than the length of the arm of the subject, typically. And I have most of the light, I waste on the ground. It's gone. I use the edge of the softbox, of the umbrella, to light my subjects. This is where the light's coming from. Most of the power of this light is going to be wasted on the floor. But the best light is going to be that soft light that comes off of the edges. You with me there? And so I will very often even point the light. Now, I'm not used to this C-stand here. I will very often point the light across instead of at. Now, you're still going to get light on your subject, right? So let's see what that looks like without a reflector. And we'll just sort of get the basic gist of how that affects the subject. So, Juju, if you could put your feet straight on the ground and just look directly at the camera. We're just going to use you as like a test head at the moment. And then we'll get into posing and lighting stuff. Okay. So you can see that what we've still got that great Rembrandt sort of direction to light. And you're still going to have that little, it's coming. It's not coming. It's not coming. Well, all right. Hang on. Oops, sorry. That's the wrong way. Sorry, Savannah. I'm so sorry. That was Savannah. She's my girl Friday. She hooks up. Ah, there we go. Oh, that's a good question. What we're tethering with right now, what's so killer about the 5D Mark IV, and I was hesitant to upgrade because I really love my 3, the Wi-Fi. OMG. I tell you what, it's wireless tethering just using the Canon EOS utility and Digital Photo Professional. This is the software that comes in the box that you usually throw the disk away. I don't even know if they do a disk anymore. That's what I use for everything. I process all my images through Digital Photo Professional. And it's got the ability to tether wirelessly built into the camera, right to your computer, to an iPad, to your phone, to whatever. I'm sorry? You just tether there, or you do all your... I do all my basic processing for color, clarity, sharpness, dynamic range levels. I do all of that in DPP. My studio switched over, had a great conversation with a couple of different people. One of them, a Canon expert, said just do a side-by-side test. And between whatever you're using now and Digital Photo Professional, do a side-by-side test. And if you don't see the difference, then you don't deserve to have pictures that look that good. But basically, depending on what type of image, the color is so much more accurate. You get a lot. And I don't know that this is something that you can really advertise, but my experience is using the 5D4 and DPP to process the images, I get about really close to a full extra stop of dynamic range in my images. Which is that's a big deal. That's huge. Okay. Now, if you look at what images are coming out, you notice that I have broken that sacred rule, that 45-45 rule, but I still have that lighting pattern that we all lust after, and I have a good lighting ratio between the lit and the shadow side of the face. So now what I'm going to do is typically add a single reflector, and I kind of put that on the opposite side. Boom. And that is going to catch a lot of the light that would be wasted on the floor, and it's going to bring that back into the photo. So now we're going to watch the lighting ratio change. So when you're in close, oh boy, hang on a sec. I'm going to jiggle that. I dropped my whole case full of gear slightly earlier, so it's been a little finicky. Yeah, Eric, we got that extra transmitter just in case. I think we're, waiting. Oh, I see what I did there. I changed the mode. The problem is when you have fat fingers, you guys. It's a link 15, and I think it's live, folks. That's what happens. 15. Manual. Channel 15, A15, zoom 24, 50, there we go. We're linked again. Aha, I might have gotten it working. Look at that. Nope, still not working. All right. It's all right, you guys. Live television.
How are we feeling, though?
How are you feeling?
Yeah.
It's nice and cool in here, thank God. I thought it was... Man, it is hot. I'm from Florida, right? So it is actually hotter here than it is at home.
Really?
Yeah. There you go. You want me to turn mine off?
Yeah.
There we go. Oh, TTL. I'm not an expert in that. There we go. Appreciate your patience, guys. I do apologize. There we go. Ah, give me a break.
Shut the camera off?
Yeah. Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again? Anybody watch the IT crowd? Yeah, it might just be a connection issue with my camera that I've dropped a dozen or so times.
They're asking if you let your clients choose their headshot.
That's a great question. I do that quite a lot. Oh, repeat the question. Do I let my clients choose their headshot before they leave? I absolutely do, depending on the job. I typically will let the client look at the camera before they leave their session, even if it's an individual session in the studio. Not to make any decisions, but I want them to leave feeling confident that we got it done. And people really like that. You ever see their confidence change when they actually see the first good photo? All right. Okay, you guys. This is ceasing to be adorable. It's starting to be a little bit of pain in my butt. All right. Try that one more time. And then we'll just switch cameras, because it might be something to do with my hot shoe. Yeah, all right. I'll switch camera bodies, and we'll shoot the tether. Always have a backup. Here we go. Just going to do a little experiment here, y'all. There we go. Mode. And where's the other one? There we are. Ratio, and we're going to try it. No card. If I had left my lens cap on, that would have been real funny, right? Yeah, there we go. Woo, wrong settings, but good. Okay. Let's see. So we're going to go the slightly untethered here for a second, y'all. This is the $300 85, and it is a great, great lens. So we're going to let this guy sit and think about what he's done for a minute. And we'll just go through the basics, and we'll let him rest for a little bit. And maybe change the battery. And it should be good to go. All righty. Huh? Yes, sir.
I have that also. Is there a big difference between that and the L series?
Honestly, yeah, but is there a difference between the 85 1.8 and then I'm thinking you're thinking probably like the 1.2, is that the really good one? Yes, however, yeah, there's a big difference, about $1,200, yeah. No, I absolutely there is, and if you really get up and look at the file and the fidelity and the clarity and the sharpness, there really is. However, for entry level, it's just way better of a lens than it's priced for. And so for me, is when I use it, the end use of most of my photos is usually like an email signature photo or like a Facebook or LinkedIn profile. That's where most of my stuff gets used. And so in those situations, you probably can't tell the difference.
Would you be better off using that fixed 85
Would I be better using this over the 70-200? It really depends on what you're using it for. I really love that I can get a little closer. And even with an 85 on a full frame camera, you're going to get a tiny bit of barrel distortion, and I think that adds a lot of character, and you kind of got to get in real close. So it's a real intimate lens for portraits, and I like it quite a bit. But this gives you a lot more latitude, and I think that I use them both for different things. This gives you a slightly different look. All right, so we should be good to go. Settings. Well, I have these set because these do run on batteries, right? And they're not plugged into anything. You do have to be mindful of your power consumption. And so one of the things that I do is I use these on a pretty low power setting, because the cameras that are out now, the Canon 5 series get better every time they come out with their high ISO. So I will regularly shoot at 400, 500, 800 ISO for these studio portraits, because does it really make a difference in the final image now with as good as cameras are with the ISOs? No, it makes no difference. So I will put it at a higher ISO so that I can keep my lights powered lower, which makes the batteries last longer. And for stuff like this, I'm not out battling the sun. I'm in the studio. So it's much easier to conserve the battery power when you're using them that way. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm at 160th of a second. I kind of use the settings on my camera like I think of it as Common Core photography. The settings don't really matter because there are multiple ways to get a good exposure. They only matter in so much as what is your intent for the image. So I'm shooting at 5.6, 6.3, something like that, because I like the mask of the face to be sharp, but I like it to have a little bit of fall off when it gets back to the ears, but still sharp enough. So I know I'm going to lock that in at 5.6. 6 or f8 is usually somewhere between 5.6 and f8 is where I live most of the time for portraits. I don't shoot wide open because I can make it blurry later if I want to. So I don't like shooting wide open for portraits. It just gives you a processing mess. You get 1 in 10 pictures will be what you want. And for shooting commercially, you need that sharpness, and I can always make it blurry later. And so I know that in a room like this, and I've got some ambient lights, all different color temperatures, that I need to be at a higher shutter speed to filter out whatever light is going on in a room. A lot of times I'm at a trade show or in a convention or in an office or in a boardroom. And so I will typically make sure that I'm at about 160th of a second. And that will filter out most of the ambient light that I've got going on around me that's not going to affect my color. It's not going to shift it. And so each of these settings has a secondary effect. When you change your aperture, you're affecting what? The depth of field, right? That's the secondary effect. It affects the luminosity. It affects it gets lighter and darker, but it also affects the depth of field, right? The shutter speed also affects the luminosity, how bright the image is, but its side effect is it controls your ambient light and it can freeze action or do motion. Those are its secondary effects. The ISO secondary effect is just it gets kind of grainier and crappier the higher the ISO gets. And so, but within acceptable range, I assign each camera setting to the thing that it does as the secondary effect. Because I want that particular depth of field. I want to filter out the ambient light and make sure that it's sharp if I'm hand holding the shot. And so now the only thing left to control the brightness, the exposure, is the ISO. And so with the ISO, I use that to get my correct exposure. So I lock in my aperture, I lock in my shutter speed, and then the ISO gets the exposure for me. Does that make sense how I put my exposures together? I don't change the aperture or the shutter speed at all once I'm locked in. I don't change it at all. I only change the ISO to compensate. Cool? Okay. In my backpack, I have a tether cable. No, it's here somewhere around here. To shoot, because we're going to try to get that tether working again for you guys so you can see what we're doing. But let's continue with the lighting. So I will bring in a reflector. Kind of, you see how it's opposite? A lot of times I'll do this with 2 reflectors. I'll have one here to fill in the side, and I'll have another underneath to brighten up the eyes. But really, if you got a big enough reflector like this, you just kind of need one, and it'll kind of do both jobs. Because you don't forget, you've got a lot of light coming across that way. Oh, you found it. Good. Coming across this way, and all this light is going to be bouncing back on this thing. So you're going to totally change the way that the lighting looks. And all you really need is one reflector to do the job of filling in the side and the bottom. All right, so I'm going to do a quick test and make sure that I'm not crazy. Here we go. Beautiful. Oh, what am I doing? Oh, that's set to full power. Quarter. So I've got the main flash set to a quarter power, and I'm going to add 2 other flashes as we go, but right now those are turned off. I'm only using one light. And so a lot of times I have no idea where I am going to be as far as what the situation is that I'm actually going to be shooting in. Perfection. So I will very often try to put together the smallest possible kit I can. I will shoot with one light, and right now this light is lighting her. It's the fill light, it's the main light along with this, and it's lighting the background at the same time because it's a big light source. So if you're in a situation where anybody ever been to a job where they basically stuff you into a broom closet? I get that all the time. We're like, oh yeah, we've got a boardroom that seats 40 people. Yeah, but in the middle of that boardroom is a 900-pound oak table that takes up 90% of the dang room. That's not useful to me, is it? So I have to shoot in small spaces a lot. Again, using the speed lights, the umbrellas, and one big modifier. So we'll start to add a little bit, and let's see if we can get this guy up and running again. And so you guys can see what I'm doing. We're going to go one more time. It's had a moment to think about what it's done. No card. You really think I'd own more than one, don't you? Like, really? He's this total pro, this guy. I went to see him at Adorama, and man, let me tell you, he really had his stuff together. Nope, no, it's not working. I'm sorry, guys. We're going to get the tether cable going to shoot directly in, and if you give me 2 minutes, I'll have that set up. Where's Savannah with the tether cable?
What's your connection?
It's a USB 3. I've got the tether. You have one? So I apologize.
Okay.
I have one. I brought it. Where's my backpack? We found that. Right. Where'd she go?
Oh, it's just an extension.
You got the extension? Because let me pull up. We'll shoot into, tethered into Lightroom. What's that? It's coming? Okay, cool. Yeah, it's actually in the main compartment. She's not buying one, is she? Yep, I got one right here. We're good. Cool, you guys. Always come with backups to your backups. All right.
Take that back, right?
No, I'm taking this home with me, Seth. This is now mine. Why is it that you always put the USB cable in wrong the first time? Has anybody ever nailed it on the first try? I don't understand. Like, let's invent something. We're better than this as a society. Let's invent something that doesn't need to be plugged in like that. All right, here we go. And
That's what USB-C is.
yeah, that's what USB-C is. And now we should be tethered in to, okay. And we got that. Actually, I'll do the 3 needs the different one. Now that I think about it. Yeah. All right. So we're just going to go with it, guys. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but it's live. I need a tether cable for the 5D3. It's a USB 2. Thanks, man. So we'll get that back up and going in a second. But in the meantime, let's shift over from the lighting portion, which we will get back going in a second, and let's get to the posing and direction stuff, because that you don't necessarily need to see coming across the screen. Now, my number 1 rule is always to use somebody's name. Now, I'm from the South, so we call everybody sweetheart and darling and stuff like that. But I'm not photographing a diner waitress most of the time. Not that that's not a noble profession or anything. But I'm photographing, sometimes sitting in front of me is I photograph the president of big companies sometimes. And sometimes that person is female. And guess what? That happens now in the world, doesn't it? Like, women can do things, as it turns out. So am I going to sit there with that woman who is the president of Siemens International, who probably has 3 PhDs, who probably had to be twice as good as her job as her male counterparts to get where she is, and she's going to sit down in front of me and I'm going to call her freaking sweetheart? I don't think so. How hard is it to remember somebody's name for just a few minutes? Rule number 1, use somebody's name. It is the most powerful thing that you can do to endear someone to you that costs you nothing to do. If you use somebody's name, it makes you feel important when somebody remembers your name. Doesn't that always surprise you when somebody remembers your name and you didn't think they would? Yeah. Well said. So, rule number 2 is I always shoot on a tripod when I'm shooting individuals. Now, obviously, the reasons are, oh, it's sharp, it's stable. Those are all great things, you know. A lot of people like to shoot from the hip, and I don't have a problem with that. But when you're directing your subject, when you're trying to elicit an emotional response, it becomes very difficult if there's a camera in front of your face. You with me? And so I'm able to, through the use of back button focus and the technology of my own face, to get people to respond to me. What happens when you smile at someone? Typically, they're smiling back, right? Okay? So it's not that hard. So that's rule number 1. So I say, hi, Juju. Yeah, see that? It works every time. She smiled. She even knew it was coming. That's crazy. So, when you're using their name, when you're using a tripod, and when I direct somebody into the right position, I show them and I tell them. And I also have gotten into the habit of saying the opposite direction. Like I say, raise your right hand, right? No, I say, raise your left hand, because I mirror the subject. You're a mirror when you're directing them. So I want to do an exercise with all of you here in this room that is going to show you how awesome my directing skills are. Are you ready? Yes. Yes, okay. There are 3 axes upon which the human head can move. Only 3. Well, some of you maybe more, but 3 basically, all right? So I want you to do this with me. Now, I've never photographed any of you except for Benny. He was my test model earlier, right? This is it. I'm going to use my voice, I'm going to use my hand, and I'm going to use my body to show them what I mean. This is how it works. So, axis number 1. You can move your head like this. Do it with me. There we go. Boom. See? I'm just directing all these people. Now, axis number 2. You can lift your chin up and down like this. 1, 2. Perfect. All right. Axis number 3. You can turn your head to the right or to the left. 1 and 2. You with me? See how easy that is? So now when you need to control someone's head, That's all you have to do it. And when you're shooting headshots specifically, those are the easiest ways to do it. So I'm going to show you how I do that.
Can I switch out your camera to a Mark IV so you can tether?
Yes, please do. We've got a new camera coming in, you guys. And I'd not forget the card. You're the best. All right, there you go. All righty, thank you. Now we're going to be tethered. There's a card in here, but it's not mine. There we are. Okay. And that might even work with this. Oh, come on. You've got to be kidding me. What is happening to, what is with this world today, huh? What are you doing here? Oh, we're in automatic mode. Savannah. That's all right. That's just shamed her on live television. All right. Do you ever setting shame another photographer? Is that something that we still do? All right, that's not working either. Get the other controller out. Like, oh, you're shooting on P for professional. Hey! Woo! All right, now where's that tether cable set? All right. So yeah, this is the 5D4. It's a 3. So let's keep going with that. So what I'll typically do is when I have an individual subject, I sit them down, and when you're starting with a headshot, and this may be counterintuitive, but you start posing with the feet. I always start with the feet. You build your pose from the ground up. If this isn't in line, you're going to have a hard time getting this in line. So even if it's a close-up or a head and shoulders picture, you're going to be shooting from the bottom up. So I'll show you how I start. So the first thing I do is I say, hi, Juju.
Hi.
Thanks for coming into the studio today. All right. I thank you for your patience, by the way, getting all that worked out. So you start with the feet. Always start at the bottom and build up. Let me see if we get this out of the way, too, so you guys can see what's going on. All right. So what I want you to do, please, is to put your feet together. Good. All right. Now I want you to turn just a touch off the center that way. Do you see how I'm directing and I'm moving with her at the same time? Good. And now, if you take a deep breath and relax your shoulders. Good. That's perfect. Because we carry all the tension up here, and you won't even realize it, but somebody's going like this a lot of times in the portrait. The direction I give the most is breathe and relax your shoulders, because that really helps. Now take your lapels of your jacket and just pull them across your bust there. I always say bust. It's a very scientific, clinical, non-threatening word for that region of the body, so I just say bust instead. Good tip, by the way, pro tip. All right.
Do you want this button?
No, that's fine just like it is, thanks. All right. Now I've got her body situated at an angle that's going to provide depth. And for a lot of people, if you've got your main light coming from one side, it's not a bad idea to push the body out of the main force of the light. And what that has is it typically has a pretty slimming effect. Now, Juju does not need that. But in my brain, by default, when I'm photographing someone, especially women, I typically turn them out of the main light to start with. Now, you can do this either way, and all of these rules have circumstances by which that you can break them, and that's totally fine. This is just the default where my brain goes. You with me? So now I've started with her feet. I've worked my way up, and now I ask, what I want to do is to get her to slide backward farther onto the seat so that her feet are carrying the main portion of the weight of her body. If the idea with a head and shoulder shot is the head needs to be the closest thing to the camera. And if you have all your weight on your backside, that's going to be hard to accomplish. So if you get people to put the weight on the feet instead of on their bottoms, that works. Now, so if you slide a little bit further back on the stool, cool. And now put your body weight onto your toes. Yeah, that's it. Good. Now see the head immediately comes forward. So now I'm building from the bottom. I went from the feet to the bum, and then I'm moving up, all right, to the bum. All right. Now, if you just rest your hands sort of right here close to your body, this always works to keep the hands close to the midsection. It forces the shoulders back a little bit, so it gives you good posture without making them look like they're sitting ramrod straight. You with me on that? Good. And now we're up to the shoulders. We've got that, and now we're up to the head. Now I want her face in the light. So this is where our head directing comes in. Are you ready? All right. So Juju, I want you to turn your head this way into the light a little bit and bring your chin down just a touch. Boom. That is the shot. Now I'm going to hook this tether up. But if I look, now I haven't looked through my camera yet. I have not held my camera in my hand. My camera was not even between me and my subject when I started to pose them. The posing and the direction should come from this. And if you're looking through you should know what this is going to look like through your lens. What's going to take you from being a pretty good photographer to an incredible photographer is if you see in your head what you're going to take before you take it. if you shoot with intent, if you have the shot in your mind, and then you use the tools in front of you to make it, the camera does not make the picture. You make the picture. The camera just records what you've already done. Are you with me? Right? It has to come from here. You should be able to compose, direct, and light the image and never touch a camera. Putting the camera in your hand is the last thing you need to do. If you learn to shoot with intent, you will take fewer photos and they will be much, much better. You should not be surprised by what happens when you push the shutter. You know, that should not be a surprise, not shocking. You bought the camera, you know what it does. All right. So now I look through, and just because I stopped to talk to you and she reverted to a normal seated position where her head is now again out of the light. It's very easy to fix. You just turn that back into it. See? You're supposed to let me direct you.
Okay, go ahead.
No, it's all right. All right, so let's see if we can get this tether rocking and rolling here. I don't know. There we go. Now the lights are working. Really appreciate all the help here. There you go there. Let me do a test. Oh, you got it?
Yeah, come on,
All right, take a breath. Relax those shoulders. Good. And you're going to sit up a little straighter and turn your head into the light there and chin down just a touch. Are we in? We're in there. Good. Okay. Now, we might have to do a little bit of a quick fix here in the Lightroom action. We're going to use a default catalog. It's fine. Because it quit unexpectedly. So I'm not going to send a report. No, I don't want them to know that I can't use their software properly. I'm bad at stuff. There we go. Perfect. At least I'm handling it well. That's what they'll say about me. The class was crap, but he didn't freak out or nothing, so that was pretty cool. All right. Yeah, that is a picture of a gun. I didn't take it. Everything's going so well. Okay, we'll make a new catalog, and we'll call this one Not a Gun. Right? We're going to back up that catalog. Here we go. I got a buddy of mine who's he has a firearms channel on YouTube, and he rents out my studio and shoots guns with it. Not shoots the guns, he shoots. Never mind. We won't. We're going to start our tethered capture. Thank you, Juju. Not a gun. All right, here we go. Boo bam. 5D4. And action. Okay, let's see if, whoa, hello. Let's see if that works. Are you guys ready? Because there better be some thunderous freaking applause if this works. Wait for it. Wait for it. Ah.
You're intermittent on the connection.
Yeah, I see that. Might be, put that in there a little.
You want to just try the other USB port? It might be a voltage thing.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah. Let's restart that tethered capture. It literally takes a team of people to enable me to be successful. I swear. Let's go to download images to computer. Quit. There we go. All right.
They're saying hang in there, Gary.
Thanks, man. I appreciate everybody's support. Let's see if this works. If we're not, we can get that other tether cable out of my bag. You got it? Savannah's got it. Well, thanks for the crap cable, Seth. I really appreciate it. I'm just
You can get out of my business.
No, please don't kick me out.
There it goes. There it goes.
Oh, it worked. All right. Oh,
What
man.
about that?
I'm
What about that cable?
I'm feeling real guilty right now, Seth.
You want to use your cable?
It's okay because what's happening is I'm panicking. I'm lashing out nastily at people, which is no good.
You don't do that in New York.
Yeah, exactly. You don't do that anywhere. It's just not nice. All right, let's try that one. This is in case I drop it in the water. This will make it bob nicely in the surface. Thanks, man. All right, let's make sure that works.
Use that other port.
Okay, yeah, that sounds reasonable. Camera detected. Warning, failed to communicate. Now it's my tether cable. Aha, yeah, baby, we're up. How about that thunderous applause? There we go. All right, let me make sure that advances to the next one.
We can delete that one.
Okay. All right, you guys, we're back in business. Okay, so pose number 1, headshots, individuals, posing a lady. Remember, using their names, using a tripod, start posing with the feet. We have learned some solid take-homes despite the technical difficulties. All right, bring those hands a little closer to the midsection. There you go. Take a breath. Relax. Turn your head into that light. Lower your chin just a touch. Good. And focus. Ready? There it is. Okay. Perfect. All right. Now we need a little more reflection and a little bit of change of settings. But overall, I think we're good. Probably the white balance needs some work. I use this guy right here. Anybody got one of these? I shoot a custom white. Hold that for 1 second, please, Juju. I do a custom white balance every time I'm in the studio. And yes, I do it. It works.
What is that?
That is, I believe that is called a passport color checker. Or X-Rite makes it, maybe? There we go. Custom white balance. Bam. There we go. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So basically, it's just like a little gray card. I actually dropped this in the toilet the other day, and
Oh, gee, thanks.
true story. No, if it can get wet, it can get damaged. It doesn't really matter. And because it's closed, the gray doesn't really fade. So I really like that. And if you're a real dork, it comes with a lanyard, and you can wear it around your neck at a photo shoot. You guys want to do that? That'd be cool. All right. I've done it before. All right. So there we are. Good. So now you've got your basic pose, right? So I'll show you how to get 4 poses in about 2 minutes with just about anybody. There we go. Bring this back. Whoop. There we go. So, pose 1. The head tilt becomes important for a couple of reasons, right? Okay, how many people like the head tilt? How many people hate the head tilt? Okay, there's some head tilt haters, right? Okay, but let me tell you why the head tilt works a little bit. I use a little bit of tilt because when you're photographing somebody and you're shooting into them at an angle, if their head is often straight on, the neck can bunch up at the collar right here, especially men who like donuts, like me. All right? If you're wearing a collar and a tie, it doesn't look very pretty here very often, and that tilt of the head takes the weight off the collar. That's a very practical reason to do it. So it can also make them look like there's a dog whistle going off if you go too much, or like they're a barbershop quartet. You know, you don't really want the quartet. The head tilt has implications. Everything you move on a person has a psychological implication in the image. You have 2 different ways you can tilt the head and 2 different shoulders, right, on most people. I've never met anybody with only 1 shoulder. But in this position, you have identify the shoulders and shoulders, and use them differently. The shoulder that's I'm going to keep saying soldier. The shoulder that's closer to the camera, we're going to call the camera shoulder. You with me on that? The one that's far away, we're going to call the far shoulder. Okay? So when you tilt the head to the camera shoulder, go this way a little bit, Juju, if you would, and turn your head just a touch and chin down. Do it that way. It has a kind of a more affable, approachable feel to it. Right? Boom. And when you tilt the head to the far shoulder, go this way, and turn your head to touch that way, it has a little more assertiveness. You see how it's a little more friendly and approachable versus that? And then what's going to happen is it really depends on the type of person that you're photographing and what you want to get out of them in the image. So you see how you go the other way and it becomes a more assertive pose. And so typically for men, in a more masculine pose, I will typically always tilt the head to that further shoulder. If you photograph a guy and you're trying to make a businessman look powerful, it's not a great idea to do one of these. You know? Okay, so think about that in terms of you have to know which shoulder that you're going to move the head towards, or you can shoot directly straight on without a tilt, which is just like that. Perfect. Yeah. And I love direct, but it has also got a particular implication, and not everyone can handle it. If you're facing the camera directly, you are literally the widest you can possibly be. So if you've got somebody who's a little heavy and you need to slim them down, you turn them a little away from the camera and you shoot into that angle. If you've got somebody who, again, is real skinny and you get a guy who's really tiny, don't turn him to the side. You don't want to make him look any smaller than he already is. So shooting direct is a good idea. when you're thinking about this thing, you look at your subject and you decide what you want the image to say about them. And all of these things have implications. Which shoulder that you tilt the head to, whether they're direct on the camera or whether they're facing off camera, whether they're into the light or out of the light. So now we've got two poses, one to each shoulder going that way, and I always shoot both sides. Typically, most of the time when I photograph somebody, their face is dead on to the camera. But some people, and we have all photographed people like this, have decided arbitrarily that they like one side of their face better than the other. You met anybody like that? Well, typically I just like to tell people, how both sides of your face are great, it's fine. What I really want to say is, shut up, I know better than you, I'm a professional. But you can't. What happens is that when you fight with somebody over something like that, and you try to educate them as to which side is better, they're not going to like the images whether they're better or not, because you didn't listen to them. So what I do is I typically photograph people straight on, not favoring either side of the face, but I turn them both ways to make them think that I shot both sides of their face, right? I just do. Because it's not worth it. You got to let the baby have their bottle. You really do. It's not worth getting into those arguments in these situations. So like, just shoot people and let them collaborate with you. You have those people, those really annoying people, right? I'd turn them into collaborators and you'll have less problems. All right, cool. So there we've got the other side. So turn with her. Juju, would you turn this away? Yeah, that way. Perfect. And back just a touch there. Okay, good, good. I want you to put your weight onto your toes a little bit. Turn your head this way. You see the face is still going to be direct to camera. Bring your chin down just a touch. And there we go. All right. Take a breath and relax those shoulders. There you go. Perfect. Chin down just a touch. Here we go. 1 and 2. Well done. Now I will back button focus because I always will pre-focus on my subject, and then I come up and I talk to them from here. And when I talk to them and I get a good expression, that's when I take the picture. I don't talk to my client when my face is behind the camera. I'm always pre-focusing, then I move up, and then you do something to make them smile, like, I don't know, talk to them like a human being. That probably works. Some people, have you ever heard anybody, they say awful things to shock them into a good expression? I don't do that. Because I think people, have feelings and they matter, and so I'm not going to do that. But you can coach somebody and see, she smiled at what I was saying and I was ready to take the picture. That is how you get, ooh, that one you blinked, I'm sorry. That is how you get expression, in my opinion, is you talk to people like human beings and you engage them without your face being behind this. And that's going to be the #1 way to do it.
Oh my God,
Is that great? Oh, it got worse? I'm really crushing it right now, Juju. All right, sitting up a little bit. Relax those shoulders. Shift your weight to your left hip. There you go. See, I said left, but I moved right. See, that's how I do that all the time now. My right and left are backwards, but it makes me better at being a photographer. All right, turn your head just a touch, chin down a little bit, and I want you to lean into me just a little bit right there. Chin down a touch, right there. Okay, here we go. And wait for the test. Okay, now we're ready. There it is. Okay, perfect. Great. That's all there is to it. And now you can tilt both shoulders that way. Away shoulder, far shoulder is assertive. And the left shoulder is a little more affable. Go this way. Perfect. And relax. Sit up tall. Lengthen out that neck like a turtle. Good. Turn your head just a touch. There we go. Perfect. And now she's a realtor. So it's great. Like, it's perfect. So everything that we do, let's look at these side by side, the implication of the image. See these two. I can do this in Lightroom. I know how. Ha! Booyah, Grandma. All right. You see the difference in the implication, psychologically, how the photo feels, depending on which way the head is tilted? Are you with me on that? Like, it can work both ways. You can do straight or tilted to one or the other, but make sure, the point is, make sure you're in control of it, and make sure that everything that you're doing on purpose. Sometimes you take a good photo by accident, and that's great when that happens. But most of the time, you're going to take a photo, and it's going to be excellent because you made it that way on purpose. And so you have to understand what all these things mean. Are you with me on that? Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to do a quick outfit change, right? We're going to go to a little more fashion. I'm going to show you like agency comp style shots that we can use the same lighting setup. Go for it.
Might be silly, but,
No, nothing silly. Nothing sillier than not being able to make your own equipment work. So you can go right ahead.
So you are not looking into the camera when you're taking the picture.
Correct.
So you're off to the side. You're near the camera.
Mhm.
When
You know, that's a really good question. Does the subject need to be looking into the lens when you take the picture? I find that the difference in what the picture looks like when my head is here talking to them versus when they're looking at the lens, I would be surprised if you could tell the difference in the photo. Right.
See it here, but
Right. No, you can't. Like, it seems like it would matter, but it's near enough as makes no difference. The expression is so much better when you shoot that way. You could probably line them up side by side, and in a scientific comparison with experts, you could almost certainly probably see a difference if you blew it up, but really you won't. I wouldn't, you know, and my results with the expression interacting with my client are better. Like, if you go on my Google reviews page, where people review our business, they always mention that it was relaxing, that they had a good time, and people leave having had a good time, having done something that most people hate. Who hates having their picture taken? I hate. Most photographers do, right? Like, we hate being on that side of the camera. Partly the reason maybe why we're on this side of it. But if you can relate to somebody, I know this is going to shock you, I spend 75% of my time when I'm shooting somebody talking to them and not taking their picture. Does that shock anyone? No. Because a photo shoot, especially when you're not shooting models, when you're not shooting professional actors, if you're shooting just folks who are uncomfortable, the best thing that you can do is just have a conversation. And I find that it's easy to relate to people. Like, my old boss, and my first job in photography after working in my parents' studio, was I worked for this guy, and he was so amazing at drawings out of people. And I saw it really come to life in one particular session. Again, those neurons burning in my brain, something I'll never forget. There's an architect who designed one of the new tall buildings in our city. And he researched the guy for 5 minutes, Googled him, found out like kind of a little bit about architecture itself. He educated himself a little bit on the subject so that he could have a conversation about it. And this guy was really like closed and bookish and shy, but a brilliant architect. And he sat with him and he talked to him. And when you see somebody come to life is when they're talking about something that they care about. Like, you get that nerdy guy who lives in his mom's basement to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, he will light up like Christmas. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's real easy to relate to people. I don't believe in the shock and awe method. I believe in having meaningful interactions. Even though I'm not a love branding relationship marketing business, I do believe in people and making that relationship work and bringing something out of somebody by treating them like a human being. I like it because my business is like every day it's like sitting next to somebody really cool on an airplane and then you never have to see him again. Like, that's the single serving friend. That's my whole job. Like, I love it. I don't like the long-term stuff. All right, are we ready to go? She's coming back here in just a second. Any questions so far?
Do you have a preference in terms of having the subject sit versus stand?
Great question. Do I have a preference having the subject sit versus stand? There are a couple of things that I want to convey as greater concepts, is that everything works under the right circumstances. I will typically have someone sit if I'm shooting in a situation that is volume oriented. So if I'm photographing 100 people, I will largely have them seated. And there is a very practical reason. It does make wardrobe somewhat more difficult if somebody's wearing a suit. Sometimes it can bunch up and stuff like that. But you're going to waste a lot more time fiddling around with your lights. Because somebody's going to walk in front of your camera that's 6'6", and then somebody's going to be 5'1", and you're going to have to be upping your lights and moving your reflectors around. If you have a posing stool that's adjustable, all you have to do is adjust the stool, and they do that for you. And people will almost always, if they sit down and the stool's too tall, they'll adjust it for themselves. And so you don't really have to do a whole lot with your lights. It's a lot, and if you're using something as big as this as a modifier, you're going to find that you're going to be fiddling with it quite a lot less because it covers a lot more area. Cool? Yeah, in the back.
You are shooting from the top, the camera is a little higher.
Right. My camera angle in this particular instance is a little higher. We do have what we call, I don't know, the selfie generation, right? And everybody does a selfie like this. It's why people hate Tinder, because everybody looks really thin on Tinder, and then you meet them and they're not, but the camera was up here. I think that, again, everything works under the right circumstances. I happen to be at a slightly higher angle, but oftentimes when I'm photographing someone who is a professional and I want to give them power and presence, I will pick a lower camera angle, and it makes them look more present. So we're going to do a fashion kind of image with Juju now, when she's ready. And I'm going to take a lower angle because I don't want her to look small. I want her to look strong and powerful. So then I'll shoot from about maybe like this level right here. Okay? Because people think that it makes you look thinner, a higher angle, but very often it does just as much to truncate your neck and make you look like you have no neck as it does to make your body look smaller. You can control the mechanics of the body and the appearance of the size of the person by the way you pose them. You don't necessarily have to get on a ladder to make somebody look thin. I think that's a mistake a lot of the time when people do it. But again, intent. You have to think about what you're doing going into it. Come on, Juju.
I was going to say, how's your retouching process? When you shoot something like convention,
Oh, my retouching process? Say that louder for me.
yeah, when you shoot like about 100 people, something like that.
Oh, I farm it out, man. I'm not going to sit and retouch 100 images. That's my retouching process. When I shoot a high volume job, I send it out. And there are lots of great services that do it, like retouchup.com, Pixera, there's a bunch of them. It doesn't matter. Find a good one and just send it out. Remember that in those situations, very often your image is going to end up about 40 pixels on an email signature. So I don't get so persnickety about how the retouching doesn't look exactly like it would if I would do it. But I do like a light, natural retouch. My friend Stephanie calls it beautiful but believable. That's what we go for. Because I like people to have pores. Anybody like pores? Yeah, pores are good. I like those. And I like them to have roundness under the eye, not darkness. Because that's the first thing that people do when they learn how to use Photoshop poorly, is that they take away that and they flatten all that out. Or they take the whites of the eyes and they make them creepy bright, stuff like that. I don't like any of that, man. If you want that, you can use an Instagram filter. Anybody have a client ask you to put an Instagram filter on their image? Does that eat your soul inside? I've spent 15 years learning how to be a professional facial retoucher, and I made you look 10 years younger and like you got a good night's sleep and that you're not a horrible person, and you want an Instagram filter. No, it's really, I have a very satisfying life. I do. All right. So now there's going to be a clear difference in how I'm going to shoot this. Oftentimes when you're shooting fashion, you want deeper shadows. If I'm shooting professional images for like realtors and stuff like that, this thing is enormous. I'm just going to move this out of the way. I largely will favor to a low contrast lighting ratio or flat lighting because the way that lighting works is if it's coming from a direction, anything on the surface of the skin is going to get a shadow, right? Because like if a sun shines on the mountain, the shadow of the mountain hits the ground on the other side. But that mountain is now a mole or a pimple or something like that. So think about that. You're going to see texture when the light is from a directional. So for that, I will largely shoot mostly flat or with a low contrast lighting ratio. For fashion and for more drama, I will often love to play with deep shadows. Because people who look like Juju does can handle that type of lighting, and it's very dramatic. I really like that edgy and dramatic lighting. And so I will oftentimes shoot with a lot less fill and a lot more shadow. And I tend to find that if you wanted to find the simplest way to explain the difference between portrait lighting and fashion lighting, portrait lighting heavily favors narrow lighting. That is shooting into the shadow side of the face, which I'll show you. And fashion lighting tends to heavily favor broad lighting, which is shooting into the lit side of the face. And the difference between how you get those two, I will show you. It's as simple as taking 2 steps, all right? Literally, 2 steps to the side. So turn and face me straight on, please, Juju. All right. Now, if you shoot a subject dead straight on, and we'll see that come up here in a second. Boom. OK. Now, you're going to notice that you have that lighting pattern. The shadow side of the face is going to be our left, camera right, or subject anatomical right. You see where the shadow is there. Now, the lit side of the face is the side that the light is coming from, right? So if you're going to shoot in a more portrait lighting, a more traditional portrait lighting, they conventionally will always encourage you to shoot narrow. So that means your camera angle is going to be on the shadow side of the face. So if you adjust yourself slightly, whether you don't even have to move your subject or your lights, we're going to shoot into narrow light right here. Perfect. And she even moved her face. So that's actually pretty cool. I like the way that looks. I think that's awesome. Fashion relies a lot more on, see, that's narrow lighting. That's shooting into the shadow side of the face. What's that? Thanks, man. I'm glad you're here. Every time I look back there and you're smiling, it just makes me want to keep going.
By the way, this monitor is it's like a world of difference from this.
Hey, yeah, I know. You know what the opposite sex finds attractive? Color acuity. You just keep going with that, man. You'll meet the right girl someday. You really do. That was a real nerdy joke, you guys. All right. So now, I'm going to move this thing. I tested that joke out on Seth earlier. He didn't laugh either. Anyway, so now we're going to shoot a little more broadly. So what I want you to do, Juju, is turn just slightly this way. And I want you to tilt your head and lean over your knees just a little bit. And I want you to pretend like I'm putting my left hand on your right shoulder and pull that down. Pressing your shoulder down. Yep. See? Good. Tried and true methods, you guys. All right, cool. Let me move this out of the way because I don't want this in the shot.
Can I ask a question?
You may.
Do you ever touch a model?
I always touch my subjects at some point, but I will always ask permission to touch my subjects. And every time. You don't ask permission once, and then now you get to touch them forever. That's not how it works. Like, oh, you see him 2 weeks later at the grocery store. You're like, oh, love your hair. It's so great. Like, no, you don't get to touch someone forever. You ask per incident. Like, is it all right if I just move this one hair that's bothering me? Absolutely. Okay. I try to touch them as little as possible, especially guys. You may think you're really, really suave, but you're probably about 50% creepier than you think you are. So always be on the side of less creepy. I'm pro not creepy, right? Like, don't be a creeper. And the older we get, guys, the creepier we get. That's just our faces do that weird, like, creepy serial killer thing. And it's fine. Just don't touch them without asking. Anybody. Male, female, child, adult, anybody. Always ask. Because some people react very poorly to being touched. Some people don't like it at all. All right. That's a great question, Juju. All right. Now we're going to shoot a little broad. All right. So I want you to pretend like I'm pulling on your right wrist. Ready? I'm going to pull on it. There. Always have joints never on the same level. It always makes a shot more interesting. Good. And let's try out and see what that looks like. Bam. Okay. All right. Now this is cool. You're going to see the difference, and you go, oh, yeah, that does kind of look more fashionable. And all we did is take a couple steps to the right. You with me? That's going to be the difference between portrait lighting and fashion lighting. But if I had to make one sentence to tell you, fashion lighting is broad lit a lot more. Portrait lighting really steers away from broad lighting for the most part. And that's kind of it. So if you want your images to look a little more fashiony, just start broad lighting a lot more. And I think people will assume you're a fashion photographer. OK, cool. So what we've got is a great one light. I have not used anything but one Canon speedlight so far. I don't have big, fancy, expensive, super lights. And that is good enough for any use you could possibly want. So don't think, all these could be yours, absolutely. Now I'm going to add a second light. And you know what happens when we add new stuff into the mix? Something breaks, probably, but we'll try. All right. It's been a really trying day for us, Seth. We're doing it, though.
Well, for you.
For me.
Well, for you.
Yeah, he doesn't care about me. He's like, I can go home after this. You have to live with the shame of failing on YouTube for the rest of your life. The shame. All right. It's all right. I really appreciate your help and support. How about we do this? Whoop. OK. So I'm adding an edge light. Now, there are different ways to use edge light, and everybody has a little bit of a different philosophy on how this works. OK, we still got so much time. You guys must be stoked. 1 more hour to go. I'm just kidding. 40 minutes. Edge lighting, let's back up. Photography is a two-dimensional medium. We can all agree on that because that's a fact. OK? No, it's not. No. What you're trying to do with photography, the end game is to try to make a two-dimensional medium have more dimensionality, to make it pop off the screen, off the page, right? So that is the purpose behind our art. We're trying to create depth into something that is a two-dimensional abstraction, and we're trying to make it deeper. We're trying to make it tangible, like you could touch it, like you could reach into it. The best photographs will stop you dead in your tracks because the dimension, it's why we use directional light, it's why we use edge lighting. Everything that we do is to try to create more dimension in images. And if you understand that going in, then you can start to use these tools in a way that is going to provide you with results. Don't just point a light at a subject just because. You want to, pardon me, you want to have a reason for every light to be there. So I'm adding an edge light here. And this is another Canon 600 speedlight, also on wireless. And what I want to do is I want to give a little bit of edge to her hair and her shoulder just by popping in a little bit. I really like a subtle edge light, almost so subtle that you aren't really totally sure that it's there. Like, especially if you're adding hair light and edge light. I know you're worried about me there.
I just know you're going to go down. So.
There's a 100% chance that I'm going to trip over something at some point. So I like hair and edge light to be real subtle most of the time. I'm not shooting the promo poster for Dancing with the Stars, so I don't really need that super hot edge light and stuff. I like it just to seep in there and to to hit the cusp of the jawline and add a little dimension to the hair. That's it. And most of the time. And if you really want to blow it out, you can, but I don't recommend it. All right, are you ready? Give me that same broad pose. I'm going to pull your wrist down again. There you go, perfect. Yeah, actually, you're perfect. I'm not going to change anything. Rule number 1, erase all the other rules. If somebody's doing something right, don't correct them. If you're working with somebody and they're sitting there and it looks good, don't start going through the format just because you're going through how you pose people. If somebody's sitting there doing something right, take a picture of it. It'll probably be your favorite one. In fact, a lot of times I'll start moving my lights around and I will tinker with stuff just to let the subject sit there for a few minutes, because they will often put themselves into a really good natural pose. Not all the time, but sometimes it's really good. And take a picture of it. Don't change it. Just because you didn't put them in the position, it doesn't mean you're not a good photographer. Not every idea has to be yours, right? Okay, here we go. Perfect. All right, you go that way a little bit. All right, here we go. Let's add that edge light. Yeah, there we go. Now we're going to see that it's a little bit hot for me. I'll probably back it off a little bit. But now you see the dimensionality coming out. Like now she's going to start coming off the background. And so we have complete control over this if we want to. But I'm going to dial that back a little bit. So what's really cool with this controller is you can actually control the power of the lights from the unit, which is really neat. So that you don't have to, there we go. Now you're going to go, Gary, did you turn it off? No, I didn't. I just cut the power in half. All right, so let's take a look. See just a little wisp back on her back shoulder right there, and just a little bit light up in her hair. This to me is a little bit too much, because your eye, and this is largely a low-key image. And so in a low-key image, your eye is going to go to the brightest part of the image, or the area where the highest contrast is, and that's going to be her shoulder. So that shoulder is so bright that it's keeping my eyes from ending up on that face and that beautiful expression. And so we're going to dial that back a little bit, and now I'm back on her face. Do you see how that works? Like there, I'm looking at her shoulder, and now I'm looking at her face, but I still have separation there. Very subtle changes. Are you with me? All right, cool. And now, I'm going to pose that one more time. I really want to pull your right, I love cross leg was fine. Bring your right arm over and pull it across. Yeah, there we go. And now into me just a little bit and tilt your head back this way. Yeah, just so. Yeah, you got it. And take a breath. Let it out. Beautiful. Okay. There, we're there. Let's bring the arm a little bit out that way, away from the body. Yeah, perfect. There we go. All right. Tilt your head into the light that way. That way, touch. And now I go from, we're going to go that way. Yeah, that's what I like. That face, my goodness. All right, come to me a little bit. There we go, perfect. Awesome, very cool. So now, what we've got is great dimension, and we've got great expression. Everything's really working. So now what I want to do is to sort of try and make something unique, right? The better you understand your equipment and the better you understand what you're doing, once you've got all that basic stuff on lock, now you get to play, which is cool. If you're shooting and worrying about whether or not you got a correct exposure, you don't get to play. You should be able to use your equipment that you use all the time and know that you could nail that exposure. So get your shots, get your commission in the can, and then start to experiment, because that's what's fun about photography is playing, right? So come up with an idea. So what we're going to do is add some color gels to the equation and see if that works. We'll see how that goes. I'm going to add, do we have a purple one? I don't know, let me look. These are really cool Magmod gels. Ah, here we go, we do have purple. And so I don't actually own these. These were loaned to me for this event. And I dig it. They're really cool so far. So hey, if anybody at MagMod's watching, I could definitely hook up with you guys as a sponsor. I'm fine with that, man. All right. Again, adding another speed light. This one's got purple gel on it. And we're going to zoom it in. It took me like 8 years of shooting to realize how effective it can be to zoom your flash heads in and out. Like, in this close quarters, if my flash was on a wide setting, like 24 millimeters, it'd be here, it'd be here, it'd be everywhere. So I go to the flash head, and I'm zooming this in to like 200. So that what it does is it actually pulls the bulb further back into the housing and allows the natural shape of the housing to narrow the beam, almost like a built-in snoot onto the light. Are you with me? And so you can control the spread of the light coming out of the speed light just by zooming in and zooming out. And so I was shooting a wedding with another photographer friend of mine back when I used to shoot weddings. And I used to bring out these elaborate like snoot things that I made for my speed lights out of construction paper and stuff like that. And my buddy goes, you know, you don't need to do that. I was like, oh, neurons burning a path across my brain, reminding me how stupid I am for not knowing how to use your equipment. It's shocking what you can learn if you read the manual, right? It's really, really amazing, amazing stuff. I got a buddy of mine who works for Canon, and he knows everything about everything when it comes to cameras. And whenever I see him at a convention and I happen to have my gear with me, I'm like, here, could you just set this up really like a smart person would? And he goes there like a Rubik's Cube, like a genius kid with a Rubik's Cube. And now I've got a perfect menu with all of my custom settings in it. I love it, man. That guy is amazing. All right, so let's double check. We've got that at, so right now I'm only using this light at 1/4 power. That's pretty wild. At 1/4 power, you'll easily get 600 or 700 flashes out of this, maybe more. So that's why I use it on that setting, and the recycle time is good. And I've also got the Canon extra battery pack on there too, which is cool. And I like using the double A's. There is an advantage, and I know that some people are like, oh, I really like the lithium-ion rechargeable ones, and that is a cool feature in other devices, but I prefer double A's because batteries degrade over time. And they get worse and worse and worse if you use rechargeables, right? And I do use rechargeables. With double A's, they're so cheap to just replace them, and then they're great again. You know, if you have a built-in battery, that can go over time, and that could be a very expensive repair. So for speed lights, I'm just fine using double A batteries. I think it's an advantage for me. All right. There we go. All right, maybe a little more juice out of that one. Ah, now we're doing something cool. Very cool. You know, you look good just sitting there doing nothing. This is like hanging out, just looking awesome. There we go. Oh, that's a little too much. We got Cyndi Lauper there for a second. Let's dial it back. I always think of Goonies when I think of Cyndi Lauper. Have you gone back and watched Goonies as an adult? Don't do it. It's not great. Just enjoy it in your childhood as a great film. Anyway, that's totally off topic. All right, let's do this one more time. I'll do the same thing and have you kind of put this shoulder down and lean in. Good. I want to make sure that you're not too much weight on the arm against your bust there because I don't want it to squish. Call that merging. All right, good. All right, and we're zooming. Good. Perfect. And let's go for like a little bit of intensity. We'll just, one of the ways I direct people in their face when I want them to be more intense is I say, let's just harden up your face a little bit. I just go like that, you know, because you go, you get your, and it works. Except when you smile and ruin the whole thing. Now you're doing great. She's so patient to sit up here on camera the whole time while I just talk and not take pictures. But I told you I talk more than I take pictures. All right, good. Now bring your left arm back and put your hand right about here. Yeah, see, I'm going to separate that arm from the body a little bit too. And then forward. Yeah, there you go. And pull that shoulder a little closer to your face. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so let's take 3. 1, 2. Come your head this way a little bit. Chin down a touch. And back into the light that way. Good. Excellent. That's killer. All right, cool. Having some fun with gels. There we go. I'm going to put some gels on the background. By the way, if I'm using gels typically in my studio, I use gels on a dark gray or a black background rather than a white. I just think it turns out better. I know everybody has a philosophy on that, and that's fine. You're wrong, but it's fine. You can do it either way, but you'll find it's a lot easier to get the color you want when the background that you're putting the gel on is darker. I would say that shooting gels onto a light background is a little more of an advanced. You're gonna go, why did I even buy these gels? And you're gonna get frustrated. You can get the same looks, but it's a little higher degree of difficulty. You're gonna have a lot more fun if you just shoot those gels onto a dark background. With me there? Okay, cool. Let's do that. Now here's a good example of when I would touch my subject, all right? Is it all right if I touch your hair? You got one wild one right here? Is he sure? She said yes. I didn't touch her before she said yes. I'm just gonna pull that back.
You need me to shake it?
Hold on. Shake it like a Polaroid picture. Boy, that's 2002. Came back to bite us, didn't it? Yeah, great. And
Go ahead.
got it.
You might want to change the angle because now it's 200 and it's on the background. You want the more spread, or you just still want to, because it's that good.
Great question. This is a thing that I would have figured out after taking a test shot, and you just solved my problem. She said that now my flash head is zoomed in at 200, and now I'm pointed at the background. Do I want it to be wider? The answer is possibly, I don't know. I'm going to do a test shot and see what it looks like and make adjustments then. I might want to change the angle on the background completely. So I don't, by and large, you're absolutely correct, though. Oh, yeah, because what happens with these when they're close is you can see the shape of the square shape of the light. So we're going to want to zoom that out a little bit. Good catch. So let's put that to 35, lower it down a little bit. And I want this to sort of like light up right kind of behind her head and then fade off into a gradient. It's going to look real cool. All right. Yeah, there we go. Now we're going to turn the power down a little bit. There. Booyah. We might. That's looking pretty cool. And, okay, zoom 20. Bam. All right, we're there. There's what I wanted. When you're sitting there and you got that like, hurry up idiot face on, that's a great model face. Look at it. How cool is that, right? Now what we're using is stuff that most of us already own. And cheap umbrellas. It's awesome, right? Now, we're going to talk about camera angle. This is a much nicer tripod than the one I have. So it might take me a second to figure out how to use it. Nope. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
I get this complaint that I'm always cropping the top of the head like that.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about cropping into the head. Yeah. Well, we have, in a unique situation with hair like Juju's that's big, you're going to run into it more often. By and large, when I'm shooting portraits, I crop fairly wide. I'm kind of shooting here a little bit differently, just because I'm having fun with it, but I typically will try to at least get the same shot zoomed in, because I like a higher resolution, and when you zoom in optically, you get a little more clarity in the eyes and stuff, so it really depends on what the intended use is. But I will also take that same shot with the head and the shoulders and everything in, because you can always crop out later if you want. But I always shot for the crop, or like that I always shot for the end crop. And I find that ends up causing me to have so much work later and have those conversations with clients who don't understand art or composition or science. But leave the head in. You're not going to go wrong shooting a little wider.
Quick question. What's the material that you're backing?
I'm sorry?
Material. What's it made of?
Oh, that's just a seamless paper. What material is the background? I believe it's just a gray seamless paper. What?
Fashion gray satin.
Fashion gray from Savage. Yeah, you can buy it right here at Adorama today. You can take one home with you. Okay. Or you can take that one. Seth said you could have it. All right. So I want to give a little more power. So I'm going to go a little bit lower. Not everything is going to be a high angle. There we go. Okay. Perfect. There we are. Right. Now, I like that one. I'm just kidding. Just giving you a hard time. Oh, boy, it's been a long day, y'all. All right. A lot of walking in New York. All right. Bend that right elbow a little bit, please. Yeah, that's perfect. All right. Put your hand like this instead of like that. Yeah, awesome. Bring your face up to the light for me. All right. Let's take, I want you to take a breath. Let your air out through your mouth. Keep a little space between your lips and relax your jaw a little bit. Beautiful. I'm going to get more power. I may go off the tripod just for the sake of time. Go a little bit lower. I like to sit when I work because I'm lazy. All right, here we go. It's true. If you want to find the most efficient way to do a thing, find the laziest person you know, and they probably got it wired. You know, it's true. Lazy people are the reason that things are invented. Somebody said, you know, I'm really tired of churning butter by hand. And now now you can just buy it at the store. Let me face this way. There we go. Perfect. All right, take a breath. Perfect. Give me a little eyebrow lift too, just a touch. Oh, bam. Yeah. So there we go. Beautiful. Cool. Now, one of the things too, I don't want to get crazy into color theory, but the reason I selected a purple gel is because her hair is blonde, gold, and those are opposite sides of the color wheel, right? And so if you know your color wheel, you're always going to get a really cool effect by picking two colors that work together that are on the opposite side of the color wheel. There's a really cool website that Adobe has, color.adobe.com, that you can build color profiles, you can look stuff up, you can make, it'll make you a whole like color palette. It's a really killer tool. If you're not good with color, anybody color deficient? A lot of us guys have trouble with color real bad. You know, our color acuity's not good. So you can actually use science to help you put together a good color palette pretty easily. So that's a cool website to do it. Okay, any questions on that stuff? Okay, go for it.
So the flash on the background
Yes, ma'am.
is the grid, so it's tight. I had an issue where I had actually the other whole sphere.
Mm-hmm. Now,
Um,
right there.
The problem was the guy's ears in the back.
Great point. Oh, that's a really good point. We're talking about edge lighting, rim lighting, lighting from the back, because it's very, very popular to do stuff that's, you've seen it outside, like it's backlit by the sun. And the problem is when you get not just guys, but anybody whose hair is short, it turns the ears fire engine red, doesn't it? And you ever try to retouch that? Man, that's a real hard thing to fix, right? So this is one of the reasons where, with intent, that you want that edge light to be more subtle. You know, I don't typically put a light behind the person. In this case, her hair obviously covers her ears. And for most women with hair of any really given length, you don't really need to worry about it. But you do have to keep an eye on that for men. So you can't, like, when I shoot volume, when I shoot multiple people, back to back to back to back, I don't typically have an edge light or a very strong edge light. I just have a lot of, like, flat front light because of that. Like, you have to light in a way that was going to make the most people look good. You know, you can't shoot volume and then make an individual lighting setup for each person that sits in front of you. It's going to ruin your day. You have to do that. You're going to shoot very few people by comparison. All right, anything else?
I know you were saying that this kit is relatively small, but as you see, we're in New York, and a lot of times I have to carry my gear.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any recommendations for something that's efficient but not as big? Like, I can't carry C-stands.
Right. Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, these aren't mine, actually, the C-stands. These belong to the store here. I use some really light portable light stands that Manfrotto makes, and they stack. I don't know what they're called, the nano stands or something. These are actually these are a larger version of what I use, but they make them pretty small, and they go up to like 80 inches collapsible, and they also stack flat on top of each other and click together. And I have 3 of those in a go bag, and that's my kit when I go on location. They're really light, and they stack up, and they're really cool. So I dig those. I don't take a big kit out like this for most stuff. I'm using real light equipment, fits in one bag. And so there are lots and lots of light, portable light stand options. It is important in New York. How many people have a big studio space in New York? Not a lot. Like, it's not feasible, especially in Manhattan. It's expensive to live here. Do you guys know that? It's crazy. Are you aware? I walked into my hotel room yesterday, and it's like the smallest hotel room I've ever been in. It's like, seriously, I could touch both walls like this in my room. Anyway, that's. Do they not always show people on TV that live in New York City with these massive apartments, and you're watching Friends going, no, there's no way. Like, that would be a $4 million apartment, and it would still be half that size, you know? Anyways, all right, cool. Any other questions on the lighting and the posing stuff? I'm going to change and do one more different lighting setup.
How is about putting the arm, on this kind of stance? They can balance.
You talking about a boom?
Yes.
Like using a boom arm? You could actually do this. There is absolutely no reason why I have a boom arm right now. Like you wouldn't need it to do this setup. However, I do a lot. You should see in my studio, I've got that 8-foot umbrella on a boom, and I use it's an Avenger boom stand. It's a pretty compact one. But when you're using a boom, practice with it a lot, because getting that weight ratio right, you're going to drop a light stand on somebody's head at some point if you just take it out and go, oh, I'm going to start using a boom now. I've been shooting with a boom in my studio every day for about 5 years, and I still almost drop it on a pretty regular basis. And that's knowing my equipment really well and being able to counterbalance stuff. So it is a little level of danger that you might not want to take on location. You definitely don't need one to accomplish most things. What it's really good for is if you want to do like clamshell lighting, beauty dish, soft, like you can do that. You need a boom to really do that without getting the light stand in the shot. But for the most part, if you're using a big light source indirect, you'll be able to, with a reflector, get soft enough light where you don't really need to worry about that. And especially if you shoot on your own and you're taking equipment out and somebody bumps into it the wrong way and it goes over, you lose a light stand, possibly get a lawsuit, you know. So I recommend kind of being real familiar with the boom before you try to incorporate one on location. And certainly, it's not a bad idea to have an extra set of hands or an assistant with you if you're using one on location. They can be very dangerous. These are very expertly balanced by Seth. He actually taught me how to use a C-stand today. I've never used one of these. And no, I'm serious. You did. Anyway, any other questions? No? Nothing? Okay, cool. All right, let's keep moving on. All right. Let's do a couple standing. I want to show you another cool shot that's easy portfolio builder. Would you mind standing, Juju?
No feet, right?
No feet. Were you going to go change your shoes?
I would.
All right, so I really like looks that I can accomplish quickly. A lot of what I do in my studio is about getting the maximum amount of looks and styles in a short amount of time. We do a lot of what we call agency comps. And so an agency comp is when you have somebody who wants to be a model and they're not represented by an agency, and they're putting together a basic sort of comp card, even though they don't print them all that much compared to how they used to. A basic set of looks of them, generally fairly plain, nothing high concept, just them in a few different situations, a body shot, a mid shot, a head shot. And it's so that they can submit to an agency to get representation. And so I shoot a lot of agency comps. And it's a really great little moneymaker in the studio working with unrepresented models and helping them get representation. And you can create some really cool relationships with agencies that way too, which is also a really cool thing to do. Let me go that away. So one of my favorites is, we're going to go back down to one light here, is to do the flying saucer maneuver. Let's see if I can do this without breaking anything. Okay, guys, here we go. Oh. There it is. Whew. Now, the reason I call this the flying saucer, you guys get it? Just kidding. I know that was dumb. I'm really sorry. I apologize for myself. There we go. Boom. And we'll go up a little. Nice high ceilings in here. There we are. Boom. Okay. So this is a really super easy way to get a cool kind of fashion-y look. We good? We're good. Okay. And you can do this. Oh, my. Hey, I'm glad you guys get to see my stupid selfie as my. There we go. All right. The computer went to sleep. For a second there, I thought the computer went down, and I was about to have a heart attack, but it was just my screen. That means everything I touched today broke at some point. Yeah. It's been a real good day. All right, how does this work? There is a way. There we go. Perfect. So let's do a quick test, see what that looks like. There we go. Now, one of the things I'll do, and the paper is a little bit dimply. I would typically pull out and do like a fresh set of the paper rather than this, but for time's sake, we'll just go ahead and use it. But what I really like for a fashion-y kind of look that's really easy to redo, to replicate, is when the light is coming from above and you can shoot a model and where you're always bringing her face up into it. And I just like the way that looks. It's a real easy, get one in the can, extra modeling look that works really well. And you can add a reflector to it and take care of the shadows. So what we want to do is we want to get the mask of the face, that part right there, and we want to get that into the best light and let the shadows kind of fall where they may. Are you with me on that? So what we want to do is start by basic posing. When you're doing body poses is you want, basically humans are sort of, we're bipedal, like we are mirrors of ourselves, right hand, left hand, 2 ears, 2 eyes. So you want every joint area in the body not to line up with the other joint that is its counterpart. For example, if you look at her elbows, what we want is the elbows to be in different vertical positions and the shoulders to be in different positions. And the head, there's the little tilt to everything, the hips in different positions. And if you can bend it, it's a good idea to bend it a little bit and get those. Because if you're shooting straight on and everything is just like this, you've got a really like, what's the opposite of good? A bad pose. That's the opposite of good. All right, so let's go. So I want to just zoom out here. Perfect. Now let's do one really simple where you're just standing straight and looking at the camera. Perfect. Everything on the same plane. Good. Now, what you see here where the light falls is even though the light's coming from up top, you've still got that really cool light pattern on the face. What we're missing is light, the catch lights in the eyes. And so we're going to need to raise her face up a little bit into that light in order to get the full force of that light onto the mask of the face in the right position, all right? So what I want to do is have you, first of all, shift weight to one side and hip to one side. See how I am mirroring her and the camera is not between us. If you want to connect with your subject, the camera between you is a barrier. And so don't get the camera in your hand until you're ready to go. All right, so then we can put one hand on your hip is fine. And that's great, I like that. Now you're going to bring your face up into that light. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, actually, this away, and then turn your head up into it. Yeah, there we go. All right, so let's try that. All right, now what I want to do is take 5 pictures, and I want you to just sort of move a little bit as we go. Body position. You're a model. Work it.
Been waiting for you to say that all day.
Really? Very, very nice. Sass me if you want to. These pictures might take a while to get to you. Oh, man. Hold on. Waiting. There it goes. Thank you. Beautiful. Nice. Oh, I love that one. That's a good pose. And my light's not firing again. Hold on. Wait for it. Ah, it beeped. Okay, here we go. 2, 3. Gorgeous. Now, we've got fantastic poses. And when you're working with a model, they'll very often, much like Juju, know how to work it. And the good news is when you're working with models, you don't have to be an expert at posing most of the time. But you do need to know what does and doesn't work. You don't want the body, the limbs, blocked up onto the body. You don't want that merger to happen. You want to show curvature. You want to show depth. So you want to separate, great pose, limbs from the body by and large. You don't want things pointed directly at the camera. You don't want fingers, toes, hands, arms, elbows. Let me show you a good example of what not to do. So, Juju, I want you to, yeah, you got it. Give me that. See? This is not good. It's called foreshortening. And so that is give me a non-foreshortening. Oh, there we go. It changes your depth of field. You see how the arms, that's not like a great pose. Now do something else with your arms up. That is much, much better. See the difference? Wait for that to come up. See the difference? Pretty powerful difference when things are pointed at the camera. So you don't necessarily know if someone is a model, they'll pose a little bit. All you need to know how to do really is to correct the things that they do wrong. So if they go this, they go, okay, great, I like your hands up, but do something like that instead. And that's much, much better. And so we add a little reflector. The face is up into the light. We're shooting a little lower, so she's got a little more power. You see, guys, how all that works? And this is a super, again, one light, one speed light is all I'm using, and a reflector. And you can get stuff that would be perfect for any portfolio. You don't have to have all the gear in the world to make this work. You probably already own all the gear you need to make great images. Is that cool? Okay, cool. Let's take a couple of questions, and then we're going to wrap it up. Juju, thank you so much. I think we're good now. You're out. You're done. Isn't she the best? Yeah. She is the best. And I will definitely get you these pictures quickly. I promise you that. Okay, so let's jaw a little bit. Let's talk about it, and then we'll all be done. We'll go get beer. All right, what's up?
You use a silver reflector. Is that by your choice, or do you recommend that for portraits?
Great question. What reflectors am I using? I don't recommend, if you're not familiar with using reflectors as a light source, I would get something that's a combination one. I use a PhotoFlex 9-in-1 reflector, and they have 9 different types. They got white, black, translucent, gold, silver, silver, gold, shiny, not shiny. I would recommend starting with white reflectors or white card and learn to bounce the light around. Because what happens is when you start using reflectors underneath, if you use that super silver, a lot of times you'll get that ghoulish campfire lighting when there's more light coming up than on top. And so really, if you start with a white reflector, it's really hard to mess that up. So spend a little bit of money. It's not a lot. Reflectors are really like the least expensive lighting modifier you can get, and they're very, very useful. So I would start with a multi and practice with a white reflector instead of and you can even go to a dollar store and you can buy big old sheets of white card for like science fair projects and stuff for like $1 a piece and practice with those before you spend any money. Very, very, very good question. Anybody else? What do you got?
Are you shooting on TTL with these?
Also, great question. Should have addressed that probably like an hour ago. I'm not shooting on TTL. TTL is a fantastic tool, and if you're moving and shooting on location, it can be great. And the 600s, the Canon 600s are fantastic. They have a great, really intelligent TTL system. When I'm shooting in the studio under controlled conditions, I have no need for TTL because I don't want the camera to be making decisions about the power of the lights as they're firing. So in this scenario, I would be on manual completely. Anybody else? Go for it, Betty.
Licensing?
Licensing. Oh gosh, this is the question of the ages, isn't it? The licensing question. When you shoot commercially, you're dealing a lot with licensing because if somebody's going to use your image for their business, they need to pay a licensing fee. The only thing I can tell you is, because I don't know your business, I don't know your market, is that there are incredible resources for people who are members of PPA and ASMP. The American Society of Media Photographers has a whole licensing fee calculator that will help you stay right in the ballpark. Does that help out?
PPA has one too or not?
They have a lot of stuff about pricing, about how to price stuff out, and even like a business challenge group, they have a lot of stuff. But the licensing calculator is on ASMP, and I believe you need to be a member to access that or not. I don't recall. But either way, it's worth the price of admission just for that, because it'll tell you kind of what the industry standard is, what it's used for, over what term, is it renewable. I was sitting with a photographer one time having lunch, and he shot a campaign for Revlon, and he got an email. It was like, hey, we want to use the image again for another year. Here's $30,000. Like, okay. Yes, I want that job. But yeah, licensing is important, and I do charge for it, but I can't tell you what to charge. I can tell you how to figure out what to charge.
If someone's choosing just for their website, you're charging licensing?
We have a license that's included in the price. It is listed on the invoice. So when somebody knows that we're granting them a license, for individual headshots, we usually license images in perpetuity, which basically means they get to use it for as long as they want, because you're going to have a really hard time chasing down people for money trying to get them to pay you to keep using their headshot. That's good luck with that enterprise, but you get what I mean. Nobody's going to pay that, but you should factor in that a little bit. And if you want to charge more, if they're going to use it for a billboard or a book jacket cover, definitely use those resources from ASMP. Next, is that it? Okay. Oh. Okay, Savvy, go.
So, do you get the clients to choose their favorite headshots before they leave the studio?
Well, we did that one. But yeah, if I'm individuals, they don't choose their headshots when they leave before they leave the studio. We have a gallery system that we use. I think we currently use Pixie Set, which is pretty awesome. We like that a lot. And I do let them see the images, but they don't make any choices. Now, if I'm shooting on location in a volume situation, I absolutely will have a computer station shoot tethered and have them pick the image that they like the best there on the spot. Because you're saving yourself a lot of heartache trying to follow up with that many people later on. Just make them pick the one they like. And I actually even charge for that. I charge additional to a client to have on-site selection available for people because it saves them a lot of time.
Do you have a preference for the background, or do you prefer to find something more in the area?
Oh, say that louder, background preference?
Yeah. So do you have like a go-to for your background, or do you like to go outside and shoot?
Oh, great. No, I live in Florida, so I don't like to go outside and shoot because it's 100 million degrees. It is hotter than you can possibly imagine for about 6 months of the year. It's like 95 degrees and 99% humidity, and it rains every day at 3 o'clock like it's the end of the world. Like it's not like a drizzle. It's like the sky turns black and you think Jesus is coming back. That's how bad it is. But I typically shoot in my studio more than I shoot on location, although I do both. my studio is half of it's painted black and half of it's painted matte white. Matte black, matte white. And most of what I shoot is either white or black. I have a couple of canvas backdrops from Savage that I use, and but mostly it's white, black. With white and black, you can do anything. You can make them almost any color and any variation between white and black using lighting. And it just makes my life easier than having a whole bunch of backgrounds to pull down.
Can you explain the camera height in relation to the subject? Why higher versus equal height?
Okay, yeah. Camera height in relation to subject, all you need to do to understand this concept is to watch any Rocky movie ever. Okay. When Rocky's losing, the camera angle's typically very high, and they're making him look small. When Rocky wins, they're shooting from down here, and he looks enormous, like a hero. That's all you need to know about camera height, really, is what's your intent? Are you trying to make them look smaller, a little more diminished? That's fine. Sometimes that's the intent. I photographed an actor who she's in her late 20s, but she's got a very young look. She can play high school really easy. And so I picked a slightly higher angle to shoot her when we were doing the kid kind of look, with like the backpack and the pigtails. And then I also did a lower angle when she put on the business suit. Do you get what I mean? So it's all about your intent. Every camera angle can work depending on what you're trying to do. Is that it? Okay. All right, guys. That's all I have. I really appreciate you suffering through the technical difficulties with me. Oh, you wait till after the applause? All right, give it to me. What do you got? Oh, my Instagram is @HughesFioretti. That's my Instagram. That's the name of my studio, is Hughes Fioretti Photography. That's my wife. I'm a Hughes. She's a Fioretti. And that's what it's called. HughesFioretti.com. And search me up on Instagrams. And you will see all of my latest, including my portrait of the World Beard Champion, which is pretty interesting. And that's all I got, man. I really appreciate you guys. Thanks for coming to see me. And I'll stick around.
Thank you.